Are you having trouble making decisions in real estate, whether buying a home or selling a home, or perhaps you're having trouble making decisions in life? The best advice that anybody can give you in real estate is also the advice that applies to life too. I often say that I like to teach in concepts. So if we learn a concept, it'll apply to a whole bunch of different scenarios. If we try to make education about specific circumstances, you got to teach somebody or people things 500 times. One of the most impactful pieces of advice, it's really a question that I try to coach people to ask themselves when they're entering decision-making mode, is what if the opposite happens, right? There are some natural black hats who ask those things, but for a lot of people, we don't normally go down that path. What if the opposite happens? And for many of us, for many of you, if you would have asked yourself that question, it would have prevented you from making a mistake or the wrong decision that you later came to regret because you were not considering the opposite came true. Great example of this is entering the COVID market. Pretty much everybody was convinced that this market was going to come down. I went down a laundry list of phone calls with my active clients at the time, and I asked each of them, what if the opposite happens? What if real estate actually goes up exponentially following this pandemic? What if all of a sudden people really need housing and it creates a shortage because people can't leave and we find ourselves in a spot where prices start to rise? What is the benefit of acting now instead of waiting? And a couple of those, one couple in particular I had this conversation with, we decided that during full lockdown, while nobody can go in anywhere, that we were going to call some properties that had been withdrawn from the market due to COVID, couldn't have a showing. And in one particular case, we were able to get a tenant who lived in the house to walk through with a video, to give us a tour of the house. That was our tour. And we wrote up an offer contract that also had the first showing right before the final walkthrough for closing. So when things did open up, they'd get to do their first showing, but also their final walkthrough. And if they liked it, they would have had everything else in order and ready to close. And that worked like magic. We ended up seeing the property on video, and that couple ended up closing a property that they still own today as an investment property, which turned out to be one of the best moves they ever made because they took a couple of minutes and asked themselves, what if the opposite happened? Because the truth is that conversation started out with almost an assumption like, hey, we're going to cool this search off because the market's just going to come down, right? Nobody can buy a house. So I challenge you to start to work that into even decisions, around the house, the decisions outside of real estate, but develop that muscle of asking yourself that question when you're about to make a move. Are you really considering all outcomes? And sometimes when you consider another outcome and all of a sudden a bigger pain shows up that you never thought of before, it allows you to make a decision that prevents that bigger pain from ever arriving. As always, I'm Bill Boswell with the Omega Real Estate Group, and your search ends here.